面白みはないな。それだけに隙は全くない。まさに破壊のためだけに存在するデジモン、それが無限ドラモン。選ばれし子供たちの命運もここで尽きたか。残念だよ、遊んでやれなくて。アディオス。
So the Mugendramon section of the Dark Master's arc is short, but nevertheless somewhat remarkable in its own right. Somewhat. Because while episode 48 sets things up in fantastic fashion, and even seems to promise more down the road, episode 49 brings this section to an abrupt conclusion, an ending that feels stunted and awkward. And coming off the heels of Pinocamon's section of the arc, Mugendramon's section simply doesn't compare to it. Episode 48 opens to a desert landscape, much like many of the episodes of the Server Continent arc opened. But what's different here is that the children are now following a winding road, a set path which is supposed to lead to the city portion of Spiral Mountain, Mugendramon's realm. And the presence of this road would indicate that the children know exactly where they're going. Their destination is locked in, and Taichi is determined to get there one way or another. There's nothing for it for the children to do other than to find Mugendramon and destroy him. Simple, right? But then, disaster strikes. Not in the form of some evil Digimon intent on killing the children, nor even a sudden earthquake as the digital world reforms itself. Rather, Hikari becomes ill, and she passes out along the road. Taichi reacts immediately, and Hikari is taken to shelter where a brief assessment is made. Worriedly, Taichi demands why Hikari hadn't said anything before, to which she replies that their priority was in saving the world. Taichi is stunned at her response. So throughout the show, it's always fallen to Taichi to lead the others, and that was always made possible due to Taichi's confidence in himself and his belief in their mission. Over time, he had accepted his purpose as a chosen child and inspired others to follow beside him and fight with him. However, in this instance, it seems Taichi's zealotry has met its match, by that of his younger sister. Rather than stop and rest for a moment due to her illness, Hikari elected to press on to the point of collapse because she too believed wholeheartedly in the mission they were on. And so when Taichi voices his concerns to Koshiro, he cannot help but express some guilt on his part for having brought not only Hikari, but Takeru along with him. What's striking here is that we get a rare look at Taichi's conscience aside from his usual confidence, and it's far removed from the reckless Taichi we were introduced to in the beginning of the show. Taichi is now far more self-aware, fully realizing his utter accountability for the others. As Taichi converses with Koshiro about their current situation, Tentomon arrives and announces he's found something. Next thing we know, the children are all flying aboard Kabuterimon's back, arriving at a great metropolitan landscape. Spiral Mountain's city realm consists of a massive hodgepodge of various structures that mirror many buildings set on Earth, as if all the Earth's major cities were gathered up, squeezed together, and turned into one gigantic amalgam. Now this is the third realm of the digital world, technology. As I mentioned during the beginning of my analyses, the digital world embodies three main realms: water, land, and technology. Here Koshiro remarks on the complete lack of any inhabitants throughout this gigantic city, which is significant in a thematic sense as it relates to the oddity of technology set apart from humanity. As I've talked about throughout this arc, the Dark Masters are creatures set apart from humans, yet enacting some perverse attraction to humanity. Mugendramon's city is supposed to be a picture of technology set apart from mankind, purposeless and isolated. Being a human invention, technology is made for the purpose of human interaction, and this is part of what is supposed to make the connection between the children and their Digimon partners so special, as the Digimon are essentially digital constructs. And I'll talk a bit more about this in due course. For now, however, Hikari's condition continues to deteriorate. Taichi urges Koshiro to find somewhere to land before she gets any worse. Before long, they find an unoccupied house, and scour it for medicine. When the house turns up empty, Taichi makes plans to search the city instead. He leaves Sora and Takeru to attend Hikari in the meantime. Noteworthy here is Takeru's resolve to go with Taichi, but Taichi insists that he remain behind. It's interesting to see this interaction given what happened earlier with Yamato and Takeru in Pinocamon's forest. There, Takeru voiced his unappreciation for Yamato's overprotective behavior, and so here Taichi's insistence that Takeru stay behind would entail the same overprotectiveness. But this isn't the case. And the difference here is that Taichi shows far more tact when he asks Takeru to be a protector, and furthermore calls him the man when Takeru gleefully accepts. And so with gusto, Takeru takes on this role, allowing Taichi and Koshiro to head out, followed by their Digimon partners. Now rather than blindly run through the streets in the hopes of discovering a pharmacy, Koshiro elects to find a site where he can plug in his computer to access the digital network. And so spying a phone booth, he hooks up his laptop to the phone line and finds a map which he and Taichi use to locate the nearest drugstore. However, unbeknownst to them, the network is being actively monitored by Mugendramon and his lackeys. Now Koshiro disconnects his laptop right before the Dark Master can get a bead on their location. Even so, this does not dissuade Mugendramon from simply ordering his troops to target every hospital and drugstore in the area and find the children. Here then we get a small taste for what kind of enemy the chosen children face here, one whom is wholly pragmatic and indiscriminate. Also worth taking note concerning Mugendramon's army is how methodical his troops are in comparison to what we've seen of Metal Seedramon and Pinokamon. One does not get the impression there's much personality behind Mugendramon's minions, outside raw, robotized determination. Anyway, Taichi and Koshiro reach a hospital and begin scouring its interior for the correct medicine. Left unable to determine what they need thanks to the inventory labels, Koshiro decides to search the internet for more answers. However, even as they find the correct prescription online, the children are attacked from the outside by Mugendramon's forces. As they flee, Tentomon wonders aloud about how they were found, to which Koshiro assumes they must have been spotted earlier. But the fact of the matter, as we know, is that Mugendramon was able to detect and trace Koshiro's laptop. Fortunately, after a near miss, Taichi and Koshiro manage to shake loose their adversaries, and they take refuge in another building. There, Taichi and Agumon propose evolving and taking the fight to their enemy. However, Koshiro admonishes Taichi against this, noting they really have no idea what they're up against. Note here that Taichi's former characteristic recklessness has resurfaced briefly, even as Koshiro attempts to find the safest route for them to escape and get the medicine to Hikari. It seems that with Hikari's life in danger, Taichi's former calm has been disrupted, and will continue to unwind as this and the next episode progress. And I'd like to say the writers illustrated this particular part of the story well, but sadly Taichi's unraveling is halted rather awkwardly near the end of the next episode. So once again, Koshiro has connected his laptop to a phone line to access a map of the area and learn of the enemy movements. But sadly in doing so, he and the others are found out once again. And this time, Koshiro realizes what's going on. They're attacked, and Agumon is forced to evolve and carry everyone to safety. During the chase, we're given a brief scene where Paimon is watching the entire affair from atop Spiral Mountain. Now given Paimon's penchant for theatrics, he delivers an open commentary here, talking about how boring it is watching Mugendramon work. In Paimon's words, Mugendramon never lets his guard down, nor shows signs of weakness. Truly he is a Digimon who exists only to destroy. Paimon sighs and mentions how much of a shame it is that Mugendramon will be the one to kill the chosen children, meaning he won't be given the opportunity to play with them. And so Paimon's sentiments are similar to those of Pinokamon, whom at the very least saw the children as potential playmates. Mugendramon, however, is completely nihilistic in his engagement, placing no higher meaning to his cause other than a will to destroy. Now it's funny to consider that Paimon's commentary is not referring to the spectacle of the ongoing chase, in and of itself, when he remarks on just how boring Mugendramon's ploys are. Paimon is remarking on Mugendramon's attitude, or rather his lack thereof. On the surface, Mugendramon seems to be the classic embodiment of an advanced artificial construct. Cold, calculating, emotionless. As Dark Master and Lord of his Metal Empire, Mugendramon would further embody authority, order, and rigid procedure. Yet consider Paimon's commentary in addition to what I had said about the internet, or even technology in general, as being a human invention, and therefore made for the purpose of human interaction. Without that human element, technology has no purpose. Beyond the surface, Mugendramon is a Digimon in revolt against his own nature, as indeed are all the Dark Masters. Mugendramon is the raw embodiment of advanced technology, yet his will is set against humanity. And so too, as I was saying, Mugendramon's realm, the City of Cities, is an amalgam of various man-made structures, yet eerily devoid of any humanity itself. The natural order of things, however, as established by homeostasis, was to have Digimon be connected to humanity intimately. A connection that was established through various virtues, such as courage, hope, love, etc. All the attributes emblazoned upon the crests that the children wear. And like we saw play out between Pinokamon and Takeru, Mugendramon wants to establish a connection to humanity but on his own terms. And so here is his realm, the City of Cities. Human constructs but without humans. And for that matter, Mugendramon seems to have forsaken much of his own kind as well. Although this section of the arc does beg the question whether or not Digimon lived here at one point in time before the cities were assimilated by Spiral Mountain. While Mugendramon's Middle Empire stages its presence throughout the city, that presence amounts to nothing less than militant control. In other words, there's a distinct lack of any Digimon whatsoever walking about the city, running the various shops, or occupying any of the residential areas. Ultimately, it seems nobody actually lives in this city. Something else Paimon's commentary hints at is the reason ultimately why the Dark Masters each sought to deal with the Chosen Children by themselves, individually, rather than team up. While allied against the Chosen Children, the Dark Masters show themselves to be fundamentally at odds with each other, within their particular ideologies.
選ばれし子供たちとそのデジモンたち、こんなところにいましたね。
海岸地帯は海の王である私の支配下。選ばれし子供たちとそのデジモンたちの命、私がもらった。
And therefore one would assume that if the Dark Masters had defeated the Chosen Children here and now, they'd have probably gone to war with each other afterwards. Anyway, Taichi and Koshiro narrowly escaped their adversary once again. During the chase throughout the city, Greymon was made to evolve to perfect level, obliterating many of Mugendramon's forces in his wake, before once again taking refuge amidst the jungle of the surrounding cityscape. Coincidentally, the children then take refuge within the digital world's version of the real world's Notre Dame Cathedral, and the significance of this refuge is somewhat on the nose, but I will nevertheless spell it out in due course. So Koshiro takes responsibility for their near miss. But in all reality, there was no way he could have known what Mugendramon was capable of. No other Digimon has exploited Koshiro's technology in this manner, not even Nanomon, so for all intents and purposes, this is an unprecedented situation. Nevertheless, Taichi becomes irate and roughly grabs Koshiro by the shirt. Before he can do anything, however, both Agumon and Tentomon step in, begging him to calm down. Upon realizing what he's doing, Taichi immediately lets go of Koshiro, apologizes, and turns away in shame. Naturally, Koshiro asks what's up, and Taichi lays things out. Hikari, as Taichi reveals, has long been prone to becoming sick. Now, the nature of her condition hasn't really been expounded upon throughout the series, but given the evidence, one would presume she simply has a weak immune system. And that's interesting to think about with regard to homeostasis recently possessing her body, for the word homeostasis refers to the human body's ability to maintain a particular state of normalcy. Regardless, as Taichi goes on, he talks about a point in time where Hikari had so succumbed to her illness that she was forced to stay home from school. And so when Taichi came back home, he found her sitting on the couch, watching television. Believing she was fine, Taichi insisted she come outside to play with him. But sadly, Hikari collapses in the middle of their playtime and is later hospitalized. According to Taichi, Hikari was barely alive for 3 days, and for that, he blames himself. A flashback plays out according to Taichi's story, wherein his mother slaps him across the face for his thoughtlessness. Now, during their playtime, Taichi had become frustrated with Hikari's inability to properly pass the ball to him, and it was at that point that she had collapsed. And so with great sadness, Taichi reveals that the very first thing she says to him after being brought back from the hospital is this.
お兄ちゃん、ごめんね。ちゃんとくれなくて。
Noteworthy here is that this mirrors Koromon's confession to Taichi in episode 16, shortly after he had devolved from Skull Greymon.
みんなの期待に応えられなくてごめんね。
But as Taichi continues talking about his sister, he mentions how Hikari is always thinking of others before herself. In fact, she is so selfless that she'll never even complain of her own hardships, even if it kills her. Furthermore, Taichi admits that she may never have truly wanted to come to the digital world in the first place, but she did without question simply because she knew people were relying on her. Taichi had brought her there without asking how she felt. His eyes were focused on the mission, and he didn't voice any concern about whether or not Hikari or anyone else was truly on board. And so it seems now he's being made to pay the price for his zealotry. For even as Taichi talks about Hikari here, one must also understand where his head's at this point in time, and realize that Taichi's not only talking about his sister, but he's also bearing his own soul to Koshiro. Taichi's close friend and strongest ally, Yamato, turned against him, and Joe and Mimi split from the group soon afterwards, having lost faith in Taichi's way. Earlier, when they were searching for Hikari's medicine, Koshiro had remarked on how Joe would have been able to tell them what they needed.
こんな時にジョーさんがいれば、お父さんはお医者さんなんでしょ？いっつも肝心な時にいないんだよな、あいつは。
Of course, beyond his frustration here, Taichi earnestly misses Joe and the rest of his friends who have gone astray from his path. Moreover, having left Hikari under the care of Sora and Takeru, Taichi had set out with Koshiro, perhaps the one child of all the rest that he relied upon the most. And yet, under their current circumstances, Koshiro's most vital resource, his laptop, was compromised. All in all, the current state of affairs have left Taichi feeling utterly helpless, when originally it was he who would often take on this air of brazen selflessness that he now attributes to Hikari. And so, in this manner, Hikari's literal sickness symbolizes the spiritual state of Taichi's despair. What's amazing about the writing here is that Taichi's enemy is not simply the Dark Master set out to kill him. Rather, it's his ability to cope in the face of an otherwise hopeless situation. One might even say that Taichi's leaving Takeru behind would symbolize that, for in bearing the crest of hope, Taichi is literally leaving hope behind, as he braves Mugendramon's realm with Koshiro. And so here one better understands the refuge that he and Koshiro have taken in their despondency. A house of God, a place of prayer, a place of faith. For indeed, only a miracle can deliver Taichi and his friends from their desperate state. Having been made aware of Mugendramon's tactics, Koshiro implements a software program that will hide his computer access point amidst several decoys throughout the city. And the plan works at first. Taichi and Koshiro are able to flee without worrying about being tracked. However, his efforts frustrated, Mugendramon employs what he refers to as Plan Z, wherein his two aerial attack serpents, Megadramon and Gigadramon, are basically made to level the entire city by blasting it apart with missiles. True to Paimon's words before, Mugendramon shows himself to be absolutely pragmatic in his efforts. Indeed, even Koshiro realizes what their enemy has resorted to, having completely misjudged just how far the Dark Master was willing to go in order to seize victory over his opponents. And so as quickly as they can, the boys and their two Digimon make their way back to Sora and the others. Now there's a close call that occurs when Gigadramon manages to obliterate the house the moment before Taichi and Koshiro can arrive. Taichi fears for the worst and calls out to his sister. However, even as another missile is headed their way, Taichi is saved at the last minute by Angemon. Fortunately, Takeru and Sora had taken cover before the bombs fell. Appropriately, Taichi praises Takeru for his part in protecting the others. Yet even as he does so, the ground beneath the children quakes and shatters, revealing the Dark Master. Mugendramon himself has come to put an end to the children. Terrified, the children run into a nearby building, all the while Mugendramon begins priming the two enormous cannons atop his back. And upon firing, the entire building comes crashing down, and the ground itself gives way, causing the children to fall into the darkness below. Now, the narrator chimes in here and says that the children fell into the depths of hell, or so the subtitles say. In reality, the children will find themselves underground, not literally in hell. However, what's significant about the narrator's words is that symbolically, Taichi and the others are at a particularly low point in their journey here, and so, in a spiritual sense, this entire experience has indeed been a kind of death and descent into hell. And therefore, a resurrection must follow. Taichi and the others must overcome hell itself and be renewed. And so we head into episode 49. Now there's something funny I should mention happened as I was writing this particular analysis. I had remembered this part of the arc as not being as memorable nor as good as the others for some reason. Rewatching episode 48, I'd begun to think I was wrong about my original feelings about the Mugendramon section of the Dark Master's arc. But then as I progressed into episode 49, I began to remember why this section was so disappointing. It's an episode that would lead one to assume that the writers of the show had much more story to tell, but were trying to wrap things up quickly. And know that while this episode being rushed is detrimental to good storytelling, I've at least been able to come away with a good idea as to what kind of themes were at play and what direction the story may have gone if the writers had extended the show a bit longer. So Hikari awakes within a subterranean sewer system to find Takeru and Tailmon watching over her. According to Takeru, she'd been asleep for quite some time, during which her fever was allowed to subside. Sora arrives sometime later along with Piomon and Patamon, and while made happy at Hikari's recovery, Sora is dismayed to tell her that after the fall, they were separated from Taichi and Koshiro. Now as luck would have it, the medicine Taichi found was recovered by Piomon. Oddly, the medicine bottle is far smaller than the one Taichi found, which I must assume is a technical error on the part of the animators. Now, the episode starts off fairly quiet and easygoing. We're allowed a moment here to breathe a sigh of relief, knowing that Hikari is safe and recovering, and that the children and their Digimon partners survived their encounter with Mugendramon. But then the episode takes a very odd turn. Sora and the others decide to traverse the labyrinthian tunnels surrounding them, all the while searching for Taichi and Koshiro. Sora assumes the tunnels are wholly composed of the world's subway systems, naturally based on the structures above ground. Eventually they find a room containing a mass of Numamon, driven to labor by a large black teddy bear named Waru Monzaemon. who beats them mercilessly with a whip. Now, within a single slew of exposition, Warumonzaemon reveals that the Numamon are being used to run the electrical output for the city above.
太陽の光に弱いヌメモンたちよ。お前たちは無限ドラモン様が支配するスパイラルマウンテンの巨大都市部の動力源だ。働いて死んでいくのだ。
Now, much like I'd said concerning episode 34 in the past, this is yet another instance where a lot of story is front-loaded into one episode, and I'd have given for at least one if not two episodes establishing things beforehand, such as Mugendramon's Undercity and the Digimon therein. But instead, all we get for establishment here is Warumonzaemon basically throwing out all this information in a couple of lines. What's more, Hikari watches the spectacle below and instantly goes from curious to sympathetic concerning the plight of the Numamon. Now compare this to the Devimon arc, where the children were allowed to establish ties to File Island's residents before eventually bringing the fight to Devimon himself. The stakes were set and the audience had some investment built up over the course of all the episodes leading up to the fight with Devimon. And this could be extended even to singular episodes such as episode 4, where the children become briefly acquainted with the Pyokomon before defending them from Meramon. Here, Hikari doesn't get but a few feet into a room before she reacts to what's going on. And while I'm not saying that her reaction is inappropriate, what I am saying is that the writers don't dwell on this entire situation long enough for the audience to become invested in it, other than superficially. Hikari cries as her heart goes out to the enslaved Digimon below, and at that moment, her body begins to glow. While Hikari herself seems to be getting weaker, the light surrounding her grows in intensity, catching the attention of the Numamon and Warumonzaemon. Immediately, Warumonzaemon attacks the children, and they run from him. The chase is played out in comical fashion, conflicting with the otherwise dour mood that this and the previous episode had originally established. What's more, Sora becomes uncharacteristically goofy here, for no apparent reason, as do Patamon and Piyomon, causing the entire situation to come across as rather odd and random. One is left asking what the hell is going on here. Now, Hikari and Tailmon manage to hide from Warumonzaemon, so while the evil teddy bear is preoccupied with Sora and the others, Hikari has Tailmon free the Numamon from their bondage. Enamored by the light emanating from her body, the Numamon then begin bowing and chanting reverently, as if Hikari were some kind of goddess. When Warumonzaemon returns, the Numamon defend Hikari against him, empowered by her light. The partner Digimon are also empowered by her light, and they evolve, subduing their enemy and causing the evil teddy bear to flee. Defeated, Warumonzaemon makes contact with Mugendramon and pleads for his help. Mugendramon, however, scolds his minion for what happened, and then, somehow, destroys him. Seriously, Warumonzaemon just explodes for no reason. I want to say Mugendramon killed him somehow, but since they were engaging in long-distance communication, is there something else we are to assume happened here? Regardless, we then cut to Taichi and Koshiro, who are also searching for their lost companions. Now, we get a moment here where Taichi's behavior seems to mirror that of Yamato in episode 9. Taichi is dead set on finding Hikari and so pushes Koshiro, Agumon, and Tentomon to a breaking point, ignoring Koshiro's pleading to rest for a moment. And then, bizarrely, Taichi tackles Koshiro and acts like he's about to punch him. Now, the way this is all set up, one is purposefully led to believe Taichi was about to fight Koshiro, but then he reveals it's just a ruse. He played things up because he could hear someone following them in the distance. Then he insists they continue to pretend fighting while they find a place to hide. What? This makes no sense. Why would he want to stage a fight as they take cover? If anything, that would draw more attention to them. Now, the only reason I can see this was done was that the writers were throwing the audience for a jape. We were actually made to believe Taichi was going to start punching Koshiro, but then as the camera cuts back, we soon realize it's all a ruse. Like I said, makes no sense. So the boys and their Digimon huddle within a confined hiding place and make plans to ambush their unseen opponent. Unfortunately, Agumon and Tentomon are unable to evolve, for whatever reason. They're both at a weakened state. Now, it's not made clear here why they've been weakened, although it's suggested they've simply gone too long a period of time without food or rest, begging the question how long they've been down there to begin with. Now, the reason I bring this up is just to jump back on what I was saying before about the brevity of this episode. Following from the previous episode, including another episode wherein the length of time the children spend in the Undercity without food, water, or rest would give one a sense of how weak everyone has become over a long period. Moreover, this would make the miracle that occurs at this episode's conclusion that much more worthwhile. Well, lucky for the boys, their unknown assailant reveals himself to be Andromon, indeed the very one they had met in episode 5. Like Leomon, Andromon reveals he's been acting as a lone soldier in a resistance movement against Mugendramon. Now there's an odd series of flashbacks that occur here without any narration accompanying them, but would suggest that Andromon was witness to much of the chaos and destruction that followed Spiral Mountain's assimilating the digital world cities. Once again, it's an instance that begs elaboration, more episodes, etc. Perhaps if Andromon was protecting some resistance cell located within the Undercity, consisting of the Numemon and others. That would have upped the stakes and given the audience a reason to empathize with Hikari. Anyway, when Taichi and Koshiro ask him if he's seen any of their friends, Andromon then establishes a localized connection to the area. Yet even as he does so, he's alerted to an incoming presence. In the distance, there's an explosion, and the wall of the interior caves in, revealing Mugendramon. Eagerly, the Dark Master advances upon the children, boring through the cavern's ceiling as easily as one would rip through tissue paper. Coincidentally, the Dark Master digs straight through into the area where Sora's group is, and therefore everyone is reunited. And so everyone is allowed a brief moment of joy before Koshiro reminds them that Mugendramon and Andromon are in heated combat. Now what's amazing about Andromon here is that while he's a perfect level Digimon, he holds his own against Mugendramon, and this isn't the only time we'll see him do this. Soon, both of the Angemon and Birdramon join the fight with Andromon, and their attacks cause this ludicrously large explosion to erupt and skyrocket. Mugendramon is undeterred, however, and rises from the flames completely unscathed. The Dark Master then laughs maniacally, gloating as he drives back his enemies. I should point out here that this reaction is unbecoming of the type of villain Mugendramon was made out to be. As was laid out by Paimon's commentary and throughout the previous episode, Mugendramon is supposed to be an unemotional, death-driven machine, and so his openly relishing his victory here is completely uncharacteristic. And so Mugendramon prepares to destroy the children once and for all, but then for some strange reason, Hikari begins to walk with determination towards the Dark Master. What exactly was she planning on doing here? What was going through her mind? Well, it may be asserted that the presence of whatever light had possessed her body was in control. That isn't true. The light had diminished the moment that she and Taichi had been reunited. So what exactly is going on here? But as I've said, most of what happens in this episode is rushed, and one feels it most particularly at the end here. As Hikari advances, a very uplifting music begins to play as the Numemon come to aid her, and they surround Mugendramon to the extent that his entire body is covered by them. Nevertheless, he kills them all within a single swipe, and one assumes this is supposed to be a sad moment as Hikari begins to cry again. But there, the children had hardly become acquainted with the Digimon beforehand, giving us a mere superficial investment in what happened to them anyway. Regardless, Hikari's body is enveloped by the same light as before. That light then causes Agumon to warp evolve, and War Greymon rushes down the Dark Master, slicing him apart before immediately devolving back into Koromon. Mugendramon initiates a counterattack against War Greymon, which strangely shows up on Koromon's forehead. How the hell did that happen? And that's it. Mugendramon dies. Following his defeat, the children then make a hasty departure, carried by Birdramon and the two angels, and then watching from afar as the city section of Spiral Mountain unravels. As 3 of the 4 Dark Masters have met their demise, only Paimon remains. Thematically, the Mugendramon section of this arc works fantastically. Taichi and the others are at their lowest point in the show here. With almost half of the original party abandoning him, Taichi has been left to face the 3rd Dark Master in a crippled state. And in such a state, Taichi is then beleaguered by his sister's recurring illness, which, like I said, forms a brilliant analogy for where the group itself is at this point in time. In such a state, it's only natural that a miracle would have to occur to ultimately save the children from their fate. And that miracle occurs in the form of Hikari's light, manifesting itself in the wake of martyrdom. These are all great ideas, and they do indeed play out accordingly during this section of the arc. Episode 49 even ends with the children being uplifted by 2 angels. Yet in spite of all that, the show does not play these ideas out in a well-constructed manner. The children don't spend any time coming to terms with what's at stake concerning Mugendramon's city realm. Or to be more specific, when Taichi and the others arrive at the city, it's completely lacking in any inhabitants. And like I said, this begs the question, did Digimon live here at one point in time, or were these buildings always empty? Now the reason this would be worth expounding upon is because of Andromon's expressed desire to defend the city against Mugendramon. Otherwise, why would he fight for an empty city? The way things should have played out was that the children meet the city's former inhabitants, perhaps the Numemon, but others as well. And these former residents are the ones they establish ties to. They're the ones that Hikari's heart goes out to, and who eventually want to stage an all-out revolt against Mugendramon. Moreover, it should have been Andromon who died to Mugendramon, and whose death would have inspired Hikari's light to empower Agumon. And that would mirror what happened to Leomon only 2 episodes earlier. Former friends giving their lives for the sake of the children and their mission to save 2 worlds. So like I said, episode 48 establishes things quite nicely as a matter of fact. All the episode really needed was an explanation as to where all the city's inhabitants went. After that, the children could discover that they'd been sent underground, been made slaves in Mugendramon's factories, and so on. Instead, episode 49 rushes events to a conclusion, all leading to the Dark Master's defeat. Now, one of the consequences for this rush is that Hikari is difficult to relate to on a human level, given she spends most of her time performing these supernatural feats. Hikari does not act or react as one would expect a child to, let alone any person to, especially given the alien world around her. While the other children have spent months adapting to the threats and wonders of the digital world, Hikari has only been there for a few days at the very least. How then does she find it within herself to do what she does? One might say this is because of the light that manifests out from her during times of trouble. When the light manifests, Hikari acts like she's possessed, or in a trance, and seems to know things that she should otherwise be unaware of. Even so, no explanation is offered to help one understand what makes Hikari so special here. Ironically, when it comes to defining the nature of Hikari's light, the audience is left in the darkness.